Hi, my name's Aline, and last spring my mother called me a disgrace loud enough for the whole room to hear because I didn't bring a gift to her birthday dinner. She laughed. My sister joined in. They didn't know the boutique gift they bragged about was charged to my account without my consent. But the real moment wasn't when they mocked me. It was when the manager ran over and handed me the plaque for the largest donation of the night. My mother couldn't even lift her eyes. They tried to erase me, but what if the person they cast out was the one thing holding up the truth? Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment below, because sometimes the story they tell about you says more about them than it ever will about you. The air smelled like rosemary and grilled sea bass the moment I stepped into the restaurant. That kind of fancy place in downtown San Diego where they chill the wine glasses before pouring and fold napkins like swans. I shouldn't have come, not because I didn't want to see my mother, but because deep down I already knew how this would end. Still, I walked in. I had taken the trolley the way I always did. My car's air conditioning had given up 3 summers ago, and I hadn't bothered replacing it. I dressed nicely, clean jeans, a navy blouse, and my mother's old silver necklace, the one she gave me when I graduated community college and told me, "You're not a disappointment yet." Not exactly a warm memory, but it stuck. In my purse was a small card and a metal tin. Not a gift, not in the traditional sense, just something that used to sit on my father's desk before he passed. A tin of mints he'd refill with paper scraps, fortunes, quotes, receipts. I wasn't even sure why I brought it. Maybe because it felt like some part of him should be present, even if he wouldn't be. As I neared the table, I recognized Callista's shrill laughter before I even saw her face. She was in a bright red dress, the kind you wear to be noticed. Her hair was styled just right, and she waved at the server like she was hosting the Oscars. "There she is," someone muttered. I didn't look around to see who. My mother was seated at the head of the table, her makeup done in her usual fashion, cool tones, lips pinched tight in disapproval. She glanced up at me, then immediately scanned my hands. Her voice cut through the hum of clinking glasses and soft jazz. "You didn't bring a gift?" she asked loudly. I froze for a second, card still in hand. "I brought a card," I said, placing it gently on the table beside her empty bread plate. There was a ripple of soft chuckles from the other end of the table. My aunt, Callista, and even my cousin Nathan, who used to sneak me gum under the church pews. Not one of them looked me in the eye. My mother didn't even glance at the card. "You're a disgrace," she muttered, not bothering to hide it. "Why did you even come?" I swallowed, not the kind of swallow that you do when you're choking, but the kind you do when you're trying not to cry in public. No one said, "That's too harsh," or, "Come on, Mom." I just stood there, a 36-year-old woman being shamed like a child in a room full of people who once called me family. Callista took a sip of her wine and leaned toward our aunt. "She never changes," she said, just loud enough for me to hear. "Always shows up empty-handed and full of excuses." They laughed again. I wanted to leave, and I almost did. My hand tightened around my purse strap. My heels were already halfway turned when I heard it. "Excuse me, sir. Ma'am, are you able?" I blinked. The voice came from the side, near the entrance. A man in a navy vest and tie was speed-walking toward us, probably the manager, judging by how other staff quickly stepped out of his way. "Yes," I answered, startled. He stopped right in front of me and offered a slight bow. "We've been expecting you. Your reservation is ready. Private lounge patio seating as requested. Please follow me whenever you're ready." Dead silence. Even the server pouring water paused mid-pour. My mother's fork hovered over her salmon. Her expression turned stiff, confused. Callista's smile faded, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to concern. "I'm sorry," my mother said, her voice suddenly small. "What did you say?" The manager looked at her, then at me, then back again. "Merit is one of our long-standing patrons. Her foundation sponsored our scholarship brunch series last fall. We've reserved a lounge area on the house, of course. Please take your time." My lips parted, but I didn't speak. Not yet. I glanced around the table. No one laughed now. I turned back to the manager and nodded. Thank you, I'll join shortly. As he walked away, the silence around the table deepened. I looked at the card still untouched on the table, then at my purse. The tin box was still inside. I didn't bring a gift, but maybe, just maybe, I had already given more than they ever knew. The city lights stretched like a glittering net beneath my apartment window. I had taken the long way home, walking past the marina, then through Little Italy, just to avoid the silence waiting behind my door. But eventually, I found myself inside, coat tossed over a chair, kettle hissing on the stove. My apartment smelled faintly of eucalyptus and the old pine bookshelf my grandfather built decades ago. The space was small, quiet, clean, the kind of place no one visits, not because I don't want them to, but because no one ever asks. I sat on the couch, cupping a warm mug of peppermint tea between both hands. My shoes were still on. In the quiet, my mind looped that one moment, the manager bowing, the way every face at that table turned, stunned, confused. And yet, even as I remembered it, the feeling didn't stay. It wasn't joy or pride that lingered. It was my mother's, voice still etched into the walls of my mind. You're a disgrace. I blinked hard, my eyes landing on my phone screen, untouched on the coffee table. No messages, no missed calls, not a single word from anyone. No. You okay? No. That was too much. No. The familiar ache crept back in like a cold draft you thought you'd sealed out for good. I took another sip of tea and leaned back into the couch. The thing is, that wasn't the first time I'd been erased, just the most public. A memory surfaced, vivid, sharp like a splinter you thought had worked its way out long ago. My 17th birthday. The living room had been strung with gold streamers, the table covered with gifts and cake. Callista was leading a group of her friends, in a game of Guess the Celebrity, loud and polished like always. I was standing next to the cake when I noticed it. 5 pink candles, white frosting. The words piped in red. Happy birthday, Callista. My stomach sank. I looked around. My aunt was snapping photos with her digital camera, my uncle laughing near the stereo. I turned to my mother. Why does it say her name? I asked. Oh, sweetie, she said without missing a beat. It was just easier this way, you know, combined celebration. We didn't want to confuse the guests. But it's not her birthday. She's only a few months off. And besides, she invited most of the guests. Don't make this about you. Later, I found the card on the gift table addressed to Callista, my name nowhere. When the photos were developed, I noticed another detail. In most of them, I was either turned away, half-cropped, or standing in the background, fuzzy and blurred like an afterthought. It had been my uncle who told his colleagues I was the neighbor's kid when they stopped by. Said it with a chuckle like it was a harmless joke. That night, lying on the floor of my room because Callista's friends had taken the bed, I realized something. I didn't just feel invisible. I was invisible to the people who were supposed to know me best. I pulled a throw blanket over my legs, then reached for my phone out of habit. My thumb scrolled through apps until I landed on Instagram. Callista's page was as curated as ever. Lunch dates, designer bags, charity galas. I tapped on a photo album titled Family Memories. There she was, front and center in almost every photo, smiling, glowing. My parents on either side, glasses, raised. I swiped through Thanksgiving, Mom's retirement dinner, Grandpa's memorial. Not a single shot of me, not even one. Under a group picture taken last Christmas, the caption read, "My beautiful family, so blessed." My breath caught. That photo had been taken in our old backyard. I remembered standing by the porch swing that day, holding a tray of cookies no one touched. I had stood there the whole time, just not in the frame. I tapped and held the image until my screen dimmed. Then I set the phone aside. My hand drifted toward the shelf. I pulled out an old green scrapbook, leather-bound, worn at the edges, filled with yellowing pages and faded ink. My grandfather had given it to me the year I left for college. Tucked inside was a folded letter. To my brilliant little Ava, one day they'll wish they'd listened. I read the line twice, then again. He'd written it with his usual steady script, a man of few words, but every word mattered. I hadn't opened the book in years, not since the funeral. I placed the letter gently on the table and reached into my purse. The tin box was still there, still closed. I set it down next to the letter. For the first time since this morning, my hands stopped shaking. Maybe it was time to stop. Hoping they'd change and start showing them who they'd tried to erase, I didn't sleep. The apartment was still, except for the occasional groan of the pipes in the walls. I stayed in bed with the covers pulled up, not for warmth, but for some illusion of comfort. I stared at the ceiling fan rotating slowly above me, listening to its soft hum like it might drown out the voices in my head. Catherine's words at the restaurant replayed again. "We've been expecting you, sir." And the look on my mother's face, one of sudden recognition, not pride, not warmth, just cold surprise, almost fear. But the satisfaction I should have felt didn't come. What stayed with me wasn't the bow or the silence that followed. It was the steady weight of everything that had come before, because that moment only mattered to me. To them, I was still just the girl they left off the list. I turned onto my side and pulled the blanket tighter. I hadn't touched my tea since returning home. I hadn't even changed clothes. My mind kept dragging me back, not just to the restaurant, but to a wedding 6 years ago, Callista's wedding. It had been the kind of event you read about in glossy magazines, live string quartet, personalized wine bottles, a cake taller than my nephew. I'd shown up in a navy dress I'd saved 3 paychecks to afford, sitting at a table marked miscellaneous guests, right next to the DJ booth and a speaker that buzzed the whole night. When the photographer started gathering people for the family photo, I stood instinctively. I remember walking toward them. I remember my mother holding out a hand, not an invitation but like a stop sign. "There's limited room in the frame, honey. Just let the immediate family handle this." But I am immediate family. It just looks cleaner this way. Don't be dramatic. That word, dramatic. It's what they always called me when I asked to be seen. And then days later, the photo popped up on Callista's Facebook banner. Her beaming in lace, my parents on either side, the aunts, the cousins, even the damn florist somewhere in the back row. Not me. I'd been there, hair curled, heels blistered, gift wrapped in silver paper with a real bow I'd tied twice just to get right, but I wasn't in the frame, cropped out like a stain. I sat up slowly in bed. The blanket slid down. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. I didn't move to check it, just let it hum once, then silence. The family had always had their own version of the truth, the one they told at reunions, to friends, to Facebook, the curated story of who we were. In that story, I wasn't there. Not really. I swung my legs off the bed and padded into the living room. My slippers made soft sounds on the hardwood floor. I clicked on the lamp by the couch, dim. I didn't need anything brighter. At the edge of the bookshelf, half buried under old receipts and folders, I pulled out a dusty binder. Inside were clippings, emails, and award letters, things I'd once been proud of. I flipped to a page near the middle, an acceptance letter from Stanford Law, and next to it, my valedictorian photo from Mesa Community College. God, I had worked. I'd taken the bus across the city in the rain, pulled double shifts at the diner, written briefs in break rooms, and still graduated top of my class. When the family newsletter went out that year, an overly cheerful holiday PDF Callista put together, they wrote about her internship at Gloss, a fashion magazine. "She's climbing fast," the caption said. I wasn't even a footnote. I glanced down at my phone again. No new messages. I scrolled through the old email drafts I'd never sent. One was titled, "You forgot me again." Another, "Not a guest, your daughter." I never hit send on any of them. Instead, I closed the binder and stood up. I needed a voice that didn't echo. I FaceTimed Maya. It was late, but she answered on the second ring, her face glowing under soft light. "You okay?" she asked without preamble. "No, but I'm awake." "That makes 2 of us. I saw the photos online. You looked solid." "Not that it..." Matters what you looked like. I didn't bring a gift, I said. She tilted her head. You are the gift. I laughed, but it cracked halfway out. You know what stings most? It's not that they don't tell the truth. It's that they act like I was never there. Maya blinked slowly. They never hated you for failing. They hated you because you succeeded where they didn't expect. Yeah, I exhaled. And where I didn't ask their permission first. We sat in silence for a moment, her eyes warm, mine still, glassy. I used to think I added that if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd remember me kindly. That's the trick, Ava, she said gently. They won't remember you unless you take the pen. I looked over at the tin box on my table. Still unopened, still waiting. Maybe it was time to write my own caption. Maybe it was time to hold the camera. The next time they try to cut me from the frame, I'll be the one holding the camera. The next morning, I woke to the soft click of sunlight slipping through my blinds. I hadn't meant to fall asleep on the couch, but sometime between replaying old emails and staring at my ceiling, my body gave out. I dragged myself upright, rubbing the back of my neck, still sore from the tension I'd slept on. I showered in silence, letting the water hit the top of my head and run down like it might rinse off the bitterness too. It didn't. By the time I reached the office, the usual hum of city life had returned. Horns, crosswalk beeps, a dog barking 2 floors down. I pushed open the glass door of the planning firm where I worked and was greeted with a casual wave from James at reception. Morning, Ava. You made that podcast sound smarter than it had any right to be. Appreciate it. I smiled, setting my bag down at my desk. Fake it till it's fun. He laughed and turned back to his monitor. I exhaled, adjusting my laptop, grateful for the normalcy. Here I was seen, not because they needed me to be impressive, but because I showed up, worked hard, and didn't need my name corrected on family group chats. About 20 minutes into reviewing site plans for a redevelopment project, my phone buzzed. It was Maya. Check your DMs, you need to see this. I opened the message, a video clip taken from an Easter brunch last year, uploaded to Instagram by my cousin Claudia. The camera panned across a table dressed in pastels and ceramic bunny centerpieces, voices laughing in the background. Then came my mother's voice. She's doing okay, temp jobs here and there, not really settled. Akim. Then Claudia, off-screen but clear as day, said, well, at least Callista's keeping the family name elevated. I sat frozen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but nothing came. Not anger, not tears, just that quiet hum in my ears again, like my mind was stepping outside of my body to escape the weight of hearing your own mother diminish your life like a footnote in someone else's story. Temp jobs? I had 2 degrees, a license, a full-time role managing city zoning reforms. I'd been a guest speaker for 2 housing justice panels this year, but in her version of reality, I was just managing. I clicked off the video, closed my inbox, and sat back in my chair. It wasn't even noon when I saw the second blow. While clearing out old emails, I came across one from Callista. Subject line: Need your feedback. Anniversary video. I remembered it instantly. She had asked me, years ago, to preview a slideshow she was making for our parents' 35th anniversary. A documentary, she called it, filled with home videos, school plays, birthday parties, and family milestones. I'd clicked the link back then, and what I saw was everything but me. The birthday where I'd played piano, the camera had stopped recording, just before my solo. The state debate tournament where I'd taken first place? Gone. Even the clip with our grandmother, the one where she'd pulled me into her lap and said, "You're the light in this family," was missing, replaced by one of Callista. Getting her nails painted by Grandma while posing for the camera. I remembered calling her out on it. She said the file was too long and that some scenes didn't match the aesthetic. That was the year I stopped opening her emails. But now, staring at the old thread, something inside me shifted. Not rage, not grief, precision. I pulled out a thumb drive from my desk drawer, one I kept mostly for backup files. I created a new folder and started dragging in press features, policy memos I'd co-written, photos from award nights, and letters from past clients. Even that podcast James mentioned went into the folder. I titled the folder, "They Forgot I Didn't." Then I stared at it for a long minute. They had trimmed me out of videos, cropped me from photos, lied to strangers like I was some intern still bouncing between odd jobs. Let them. Let them keep curating their little myth. Let them polish Callista's version of the family like it was gospel truth. Because my story, mine's about to go public. The moment I renamed that folder, something shifted in me. There was no dramatic epiphany, just a quiet sense of finality, as if I'd finally stopped holding my breath after all these years. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let the dim light of the apartment wrap around me like a faded quilt. Outside, the streets of San Diego buzzed faintly. I stayed in that silence for a long time until my eyes caught on an old envelope buried beneath a stack of files. It wasn't addressed, but I knew exactly what it was. It pulled me back one year, ago to the Marshall family gala. The event had been Callista's playground since college. She loved everything about it, the champagne, the silent auction, the spotlight. That year, I'd scraped together enough to make a modest donation. Not because I cared about the optics, but because I believed in the cause, community-led development. It was what I worked for every day. I had registered the gift under my name, printed neatly on a gold-rimmed card they'd placed on the donor wall. I didn't expect fanfare, but I had expected decency. Instead, I got a mic drop from Callista mid-speech, standing beneath chandeliers while wearing a navy gown that looked like it belonged on the cover of Town and Country. "Some people give their time," she said, smiling toward the front row. "Others just show up, and that's okay too. We love the spirit." Laughter followed. My name wasn't said, but every eye turned toward my table. I had smiled politely, folded my napkin, and excused myself. I told them I needed to take a call, but the truth is, I walked into the restroom, locked the stall, and stared at the tiles, until my face stopped burning. Back in the present, I opened YouTube and searched for a public recording of that night's event. It didn't take long. The gala had hired a full video team. The recording was sharp, lit just right. As Callista took the stage, I skipped to the timestamp I remembered. 32:10. Her voice floated through my speakers, polished, practiced. And when we think about revitalizing neighborhoods, we have to remember that the solutions must come from within. It's not about top-down control. It's about community-led zoning, about listening to the residents themselves. I froze. Those were my words. I'd written them in a blog post for the Housing Collective half a year before the gala. I'd worked on it for days, struggling to put the complexity into language ordinary people could understand. I'd posted it quietly, never imagined it would be stolen. But there they were, repeated nearly verbatim, with no citation, no mention of me, not even a side comment like, "My sister always says." Just Callista standing on stage looking radiant, regurgitating my work like it had fallen from her own brilliant mind. My jaw tightened. I hit pause, sat back. Then I remembered what came next. Weeks after the gala, I'd tried, hesitantly like always, to raise the issue. With my mother, we were on the phone and I brought it up like it was no big deal, just a passing thought. She quoted my zoning piece word for word. I said, trying to sound casual. There was a pause. Then Mom said, "Callista said she was inspired by you. Isn't that sweet?" But she never mentioned me. "It wasn't about you, Aileen. It was a family event." I didn't respond because deep down I already knew it was never about me. Not the events, not the parties, not the photos or newsletters or videos. My place in this family was ornamental, a little accessory to remind them they had a second daughter, but not one they wanted to put on display. Still sitting at my dining table, I let out a long breath and stood. There were boxes I hadn't touched. In years, the kind you move from apartment to apartment promising to open someday. Tonight was that day. I sliced the first one open. Inside, old frames, dusty certificates, hand-drawn cards I'd made as a kid. One was a picture of me and Grandma, making cookies, her flour-dusted hand resting on my shoulder. She had written on the back, "My smart Ava, always helping, always watching." Another box held my college thesis, still in the plastic binder I'd used when I defended it. I set it aside and kept digging. Near the bottom was a velvet case. I hadn't seen it in so long I'd almost forgotten it existed. I opened it slowly. Inside, my first plaque from the city planning board, my name etched clearly, the date beneath it, a small inscription, in recognition of dedicated service and creative vision. They never mentioned that night in the family chat. Never even asked what the award was for. Meanwhile, Callista once got a mention for organizing a candlelit dinner at a fashion PR mixer. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at my reflection in the microwave door. Who was I waiting on to validate me? Why was I still giving them the power to decide when I mattered? My phone lit up. It was Maya. I didn't open the message. I just tapped the camera and waited. She answered on the second ring. Her face filled the screen, makeup smudged from what looked like a long day, hair tied up in a crooked bun. "Hey," she said, "you look like you're about to start a war." "I might," I replied. Her brow lifted. "What happened?" I didn't explain. I just turned the phone around and showed her the plaque, then the folder on my laptop screen, then the stack of old photos. "They want the version of me that never existed," I said, my voice low but steady. "I think it's time I introduce the real one." There was a beat of silence. Then Maya smiled. "About damn time." The folder sat open on my screen, the cost of erasing me with 3 tabs blinking beneath it, press clippings, podcast quotes, and now evidence, tangible, time-stamped proof. I stared at the file names, heart calm in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt surgical. They're not ready for who I've become, but I'm done apologizing for arriving. The notification came through around 4:12 p.m. I was halfway through a bowl of lentil soup, phone propped, side my laptop checking the latest zoning update for our East Village project. The subject line was bland. "Thank you for your contribution." The email itself, however, stopped me mid-spoonful. "Dear Aileen Marshall, we'd like to extend our appreciation for your recent registry gift contribution in support of the Callista and Joel wedding package. Your generosity helps us serve our clients with elegance and care. Should you have any concerns, feel free to reach out. Warmly, Kestrel and Cobra Boutique." I blinked at the screen. I hadn't bought anything, hadn't even opened a registry page, and yet here it was in black and white. Registry gift contribution. That was a phrase you didn't misinterpret. I clicked the link embedded in the footer and was taken to a login portal. Without credentials, there wasn't much to see, but I recognized the branding. Kestrel and Cogs was a high-end boutique downtown, the same one Callista had tagged on Instagram a few weeks back with her now infamous caption, "Earned, never gifted." That post suddenly tasted a lot more sour. I shut the laptop, grabbed my keys, and headed out. No coat, no hesitation. The boutique was just off Park Boulevard, nestled between a private tailor and a jewelry designer that catered to judges' wives and tech founders' daughters. Inside, it smelled like jasmine and commission-based politeness. A man in a navy blazer greeted me at the counter. "Good evening, can I help you?" I gave him my most practiced smile. "Yes, I'm following up on a bridal registry order. There was a thank you message sent to me today. I just wanted to double-check the details before I, follow up formally." He nodded, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Name, Aveline Marshall. I may be listed as the company account holder, Urban Core Development." His brow lifted slightly. "Ah, yes, that's under the professional tier. Give me a moment." He tapped a few more keys, then turned the monitor toward me. There it was, my full name, billed through my professional discount usage of my firm's tax-exempt account. The description, bridal suite package for Callista Marshall. I kept my voice level. And this was confirmed by... I leaned toward a scanned signature field. "Looks like it was authorized electronically from this email address." He turned the screen again. "Your firm's general inquiry inbox." Of course, I'd used that account to place a few vendor orders for the nonprofit housing project. Last quarter, it wasn't password protected. I could imagine how easily someone, namely Callista, could get access. "Can I ask what was included?" I said, gesturing politely. He pulled up the breakdown. Custom vanity kit, 3 silk robes, a monogrammed champagne bucket, and a vieillard necklace. He paused, glancing at me. That one alone was nearly $3,000. My stomach dropped. I had seen that necklace shimmering in the sun, centerpiece of Callista's photo dump captioned, "Some things you don't have to earn, you just know you're worth them." So that's how it worked. They took my name, my work, my money, then laughed in my face. I inhaled deeply, then smiled. "Would you mind printing a copy of that breakdown for my records?" "Of course." He stepped away. I looked around the EO boutique. Everything was curated perfectly, expensive but pretending to be effortless. The kind of place you didn't walk into unless you'd already been invited somewhere better. He returned with a folder neatly clipped. "Let us know if there's anything you need." "Oh, I will," I said, accepting it. Back outside, I let the door swing shut behind me. The sun had started to dip, the sky bleeding soft gold and gray across the concrete skyline. I didn't walk fast. I let my heels click slowly across the sidewalk, each step deliberate. At the corner, I paused, took out my phone, and texted Maya. "Me. We're done playing polite. Me. I have receipts. Literally." By the time I got home, the plan was already forming. I didn't need revenge, I needed clarity. I opened the cost of erasing me and created a new folder, Boutique Theft. Into it went the scan of the invoice, the email confirmation, and a screenshot of Callista wearing the necklace she'd earned. Then I began assembling a new slide deck. Each slide was simple, a lie followed by a truth. Slide 1, she's not really working. Photo, me at City Hall receiving the district planning grant. Slide 2, she didn't contribute anything at the gala. Donation receipt with timestamp. Slide 3, self-made. My blog post, Callista's speech. Slide 4, earned, never gifted. Necklace invoice. Her Instagram. The final slide, a single sentence. I was never invisible. You just closed your eyes. I hit save, backed it up to a secure cloud, and shut the laptop gently. This wasn't about getting them to see me anymore. It was about making sure the people who did see me knew the whole story. The lights were going up soon. Rehearsal dinner, guests, speeches, endless toasts. And this time, when I walked into the room, I wasn't showing up to watch. I was stepping into the spotlight with a camera, a screen, and a story they'd tried to bury. I didn't need directions. I'd been in that hotel ballroom before, just never as the focus. Always someone's plus one, always the other daughter, the one they mentioned in passing with a polite smile and changed the subject before anyone asked too much. But tonight, I walked in like I belonged. The luxury hotel shimmered beneath the evening lights, all marble floors and warm gold uplighting. A server held the door open as I stepped into the private dining wing. The hum of voices was muffled by the thick carpet, the way money knows how to soften every sound, including the cutting ones. Inside the dining room, my family had already settled in. I could see them through the tall, arched glass. Callista at the center, laughing too loudly. My mother beside her in pearls, my father across the table checking his watch. Extended family dotted the edges, uncles, aunts, cousins, all dressed, like they were auditioning for a magazine spread. I adjusted my navy dress. It's simple and clean, the kind you buy with your own money, the kind that doesn't scream for approval but doesn't apologize for existing either. I pushed the door open. The room dimmed just slightly as I stepped in, only in feeling, not in light. A hush that wasn't quite a pause but wasn't quite warm either. Callista's eyes flicked up. She leaned toward our cousin Harper and murmured, "Not." Quite quietly, "Guess she didn't even bother bringing a gift." Harper snorted, covering it with a sip of her wine. My mother didn't turn her head. She just leaned in, eyes locked on her salad. "You've embarrassed yourself enough, Aileen. Why even show up?" I smiled, soft and contained, because tonight wasn't about them. It was about the reckoning I no longer planned to delay. I found my seat at the far end of the table, of course, next to an empty chair. I sat down, my clutch carefully weighted. Conversations resumed. Someone clinked a fork against a glass. Toast began. My uncle praised Callista's incredible eye for beauty and taste. Someone else joked about her being the next Martha Stewart. There were polite chuckles, and then, as if on cue, a guest from Joel's side, an older woman in a deep burgundy wrap, turned to me with a kind smile. "Will you be saying a few words, Aveline? Or maybe presenting something?" Before I could respond, my mother's voice sliced through the room. "Oh, there's no need to put her on the spot," she said sweetly. "She's not exactly prepared." A few people chuckled, awkward, half-hearted laughs. No one looked at me except Callista. She was smirking. That was when I reached for my clutch. No words, just a quiet motion. I opened it slowly and pulled out a folded paper. Simple printed text. The room shifted. Callista's eyes narrowed. My mother's smile faded just a little, but I didn't get the chance to read it because that's when the hotel manager walked in. Tall, crisp suit, purposeful stride. He scanned the table, paused, and then walked directly to me. "Ms. Marshall," he said, voice clear, "we've been expecting you." The room stilled. He reached into a sleek leather folder and withdrew a wooden plaque with a polished bronze plate. "On behalf of the San Diego Shelter Board and the team here," he said, bowing slightly, "we want to thank you for your contribution. Your donation covered the full renovation of the Women's Transitional Housing Center, and tonight's dinner service is dedicated to that cause, as per your request." He placed the plaque on the table in front of me. No one moved, no one breathed. The silence wasn't awkward, it was seismic. Callista's smirk had evaporated. Her hand tightened around her champagne. Flute. My mother blinked rapidly, face drained of color. I stood up. The chair didn't even creak. "I didn't come empty-handed," I said softly, letting my voice carry. I looked at Callista, then at my mother. "I just didn't bring something that fits in. A box, I brought change." No one interrupted, not even Harper. I picked up the plaque, folded my paper, and slipped both back into my clutch. Then I turned and walked out of the room. Didn't look back. No one followed. And that finally felt like peace. It's strange how silence can hum louder than any applause. After walking out of the rehearsal dinner, I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt hollow, but it was the kind of hollow that clears space, that lets something stronger grow in the gap. By morning, the local paper's society column had posted a snippet about the event. In a surprising twist, the largest donation of the night came from the lesser-known sister, Aline Marshall, whose name now headlines the newly refurbished women's shelter. I didn't repost it. I didn't say a word, but someone else did. Callista. She uploaded an Instagram story just before noon. A black background, white text in bold italics. "Anyone can buy applause if you throw enough money around. Some of us earn ours the right way." I stared at the screen. Then came the ping. A message request from someone I didn't recognize at first. "Jules, Harmony Luxe Boutique." I tapped it open. "Hi, Miss Marshall. This is Jules. We spoke at the boutique earlier. I thought you should know they came in this morning trying to reverse charges tied to your name, but our systems record everything, including calls. I kept a backup of one." My hand tightened around the phone. I texted back one word. "Play." A minute later, she sent over an audio file. I plugged in my headphones and hit play. The audio was clear. Too clear. It started with Callista's voice, a smooth singing tone she used when pretending to be sweet. "Hi, I'm confirming the bridal. Sweet order, and I'd like to process it under the Urban Core Development account. That's Aveline Marshall's." "Yes." A pause. "She's my sister. It's part of a surprise. Could you make sure her name doesn't show up on the receipt? It would ruin it." Then came my mother's voice, firm and practiced. "She'll never know. Just apply the discount quietly. The boutique always supports family, right?" My stomach twisted. I recognized the boutique employee's hesitance, the pause, and then their reply. Uncertain but compliant. I replayed it twice. By the third time, I wasn't just listening. I was planning. That evening, the family held the final brunch before the wedding, a tradition supposedly intimate. One last toast to unity. I arrived right on time. The air was brittle with fake laughter when I walked in. People clinked glasses past fruit plates. My father nodded at me but didn't speak. My mother looked like she'd barely slept. I sat near. The end again? I didn't mind. I wanted a full view. Callista was already talking, big hand gestures, tossing her hair like she was filming something. I just don't understand, she said to no one in particular, though her eyes darted to me. Why Aveline keeps making this all about her. I mean, this week isn't about competition, it's about love. I smiled politely, waited until her voice tapered off. Then I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, held it up. I think I said, "Since we're being honest, there's something everyone should hear." Callista stiffened. My mother's fork froze mid-air. I tapped play. Their voices filled the air. The recording didn't last long, maybe 40 seconds, but the damage was immediate. Gasps, a cough. Someone's mimosa glass slipped and clinked hard on the table. When the audio ended, the silence was so loud I could hear the wall clock ticking behind me. My mother was the first to speak, but her voice cracked. "You recorded us?" "No," I said calmly. "Someone else did. Someone who heard what you were doing and thought it was wrong." Callista opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to my father. "You once asked why I never bring anything to these events," I said. "The truth is, I always bring something. You just never looked close enough to see it." I stood and pulled something else from my bag. A watch, my grandfather's. The one he left me when he passed. The one my mother always insisted should have gone to Callista. I placed it on the center of the table. This was meant for someone who carried legacy with honor, not entitlement. And with that, I turned and walked away. As I stepped outside into the late afternoon sun, the air felt heavier behind me. But inside me, something had finally lifted. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I stopped at a quiet coffee shop a few blocks from the hotel, ordered chamomile tea, sat by the window, and let the steam from the cup blur the world outside. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't open. I wasn't ready for noise. That night, when I finally stepped into my apartment, the silence wrapped around me, not in a lonely way, but in a peaceful way. On the counter was a padded envelope postmarked that morning. I slid it open with my thumb. Inside was a crisp boutique receipt, the original record of the bridal suite purchase billed to my name. Along with it, a handwritten apology from Jewel, the boutique associate who'd sent me the audio file. "We're sorry we let them use your name without your consent. The system let it happen." I didn't. I took the note and slid it into an old photo album tucked away on my bookshelf, one I hadn't opened in years. It used to hold birthday cards I never got and photos I was once cropped out of. But now it held something else. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. Proof that silence leaves a paper trail. The next morning, I gathered the small gift bag from my hallway closet. The one I had meant to give at my mother's birthday a year ago. The one I never opened, never handed over. Inside was a silver brooch. It had belonged to my grandmother. I had restored it myself, had it professionally cleaned, wrapped in tissue. I remembered how I hesitated to give it, afraid it wouldn't be enough. I carried it back to the boutique. The same woman greeted me at the counter. She didn't ask questions when I handed it to her with a note that read, "For the next girl who walks in here and gets told she doesn't belong, give her this. No charge." Jules read the note, then looked up at me with something I didn't recognize right away. Pride, not pity. She gave a soft nod. "You didn't just walk in that night. You left a footprint. A month passed, then a season, then nearly a year." I kept moving quietly, steadily. I launched a community zoning initiative in North Park. I got featured in a city series on resilient women. I didn't talk about my family. I didn't have to. The work spoke for itself. Then the invitation arrived, a cousin's baby shower. The first extended family event since everything unraveled. There was no printed card, just a plain email, no fanfare. Still, I said yes. I showed up on time, wearing a soft green dress I'd sewn myself. The backyard was decorated with paper flowers and lemon slices floating in pitchers. Familiar laughter floated through the air. When I walked in, the crowd parted slightly, subtle but noticeable. My mother was standing by the punch bowl. She looked thinner. Her hands trembled just slightly as she stirred. Callista was seated under the canopy alone. I nodded at a few aunts and accepted a small plate of quiche. No one mentioned donations or disgrace or gifts. They didn't gush over me, but they didn't talk over me either, and that was enough. I didn't stay long, just long enough to smile, to remind myself that I could stand in the same space with people who once tried to erase me and not shrink. Later, that night, back in my apartment, I opened the last envelope my grandfather had left me, tucked behind the photo of us fishing when I was 7. His handwriting was steady, always in blue ink. The world will try to define you by the things you didn't bring. But remember, your worth isn't in the bag. It's in the hands that never dropped their integrity. I closed the note and smiled. They named me a disgrace, I whispered. I became their mirror. And for the first time, I didn't need an apology to feel.